Wow, look at these beautiful used BMWs. And they're actually cheap too. But guess what? There's actually 5 key reasons why these used BMWs are in fact so cheap. Buyer beware. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. So the first reason why, in fact, that used BMWs are actually kind of cheap is because they don't wear particularly well in the sense of the styling components. I mean, here we have the outgoing BMW M3, and here we have an older generation E92. And there's quite a substantial difference, not only in terms of performance, where you have a turbo 3-liter 6 here that puts down serious numbers. Here you have a naturally aspirated V8, great sounding car, but a little bit light on the performance compared to the newer version. In terms of numbers, they look the same, but in terms of actual driving experience, this car definitely feels dated, as well as the styling looks dated on the earlier generation BMWs. A lot of times people just want the latest and the greatest, the best looking car, best performance. But let's take a look. Here's an E92 BMW M3, of course, very obviously is the headlights. That's pretty clear right there. That style of headlights, old technology. Right here on the newer style M3, obviously now you're dealing with LEDs, newer style headlights, and of course, then we look at the grille. Look at the newer style grille on there versus the older style grille. Now they look very similar in terms of the overall design theme. They're both kidney grills, as BMW typically does. They were actually going down in size, tighter, lower profile. The older one's definitely a larger grill. Now, of course, that's changed yet again, and the newer style grills are even more vastly large by size. You look down here as well. Bumpers, for example, typically a little bit softer. They're not quite as aggressive as you're finding on the newer cars, which typically have a lot more chiseled lines, juts, accents. That's typically what you're going to find in the newer cars versus the older cars. Now, wheels are pretty much irrelevant. That's more of a styling cue. But even here, you know, the newer cars certainly have newer style design elements, vents like that. The older style M cars, definitely a little bit simplified. Then looking from the back, the older cars, again, you know, it carries sort of a blander theme. I mean, this generation was starting to get into a lower grade of LEDs. Of course, the newer cars, very similar in theme, but you'll notice it's sort of that upside down LED. It's very distinctive by very design. Of course, down here, quite similar, and they're both quad pipes. But again, as I mentioned, you've got a lot more detail going on. Jut outs, accents, vents, and interesting splitters, where over here, it's a little bit simpler. Not terrible, but certainly a simpler design overall. What about the interior? Well, the older cars are particularly well put together, and they feel that way, other than some of the sticky button issues that you're finding, but they are definitely more old school. The iDrive system is a real standout that used to be integrated more into the dash on the E92 versus the newer style. Now, actually, the iDrive system is more of an upright screen in these particular vehicles. So for people buying, leasing, purchasing a new BMW, it's always exciting because there's always that new tech, that new performance levels. And that's why used BMWs often find themselves a little bit cheaper on the used car market, because people often say there's too much of a drastic change between generations that it's time to step up to the next model. The second reason why used BMWs feel particularly cheap isn't the fact that they are cheap, it's the simple fact that there's such a huge differential, or essentially depreciation, from when they're new. When you're out there shopping for your new BMW, it's not difficult to spend $80, $90, $100, $125,000 on a new BMW, depending on the particular model. But on the used car market, you find them way down here. From starting price up here means that it feels cheap. And why, in fact, is there such a huge differential from new to used? Well, first of all, there's huge markup on their product line. Look at these exciting wheels, for example. Right there, you've got M packaging, badging all over, M calipers, M badging, two-tone mirrors, black elements up here on the running rack, which coincidentally is great for hauling your trips to the dump, in this wonderful little X3. And of course, you've got a dual exhaust tips down there, also in a nice polished piano gloss black. And as said already, the M40i means that this car has the B58, it's a turbo 6, and it hauls. It really hauls. It's a great car, but you pay for that. Here's another example. Right there, we have the M760Li. Of course, this is a big luxury yacht here as such, and it carries the V12 engine. Of course, more M badging, big wheels, and of course the classic M kidney grills, of course, with the wonderful LED strips. But this is large and in charge with heads-up display, massaging seats, heated everything. So even though a lot of vehicles, when they're new in the factory, are pre-wired with all these wiring harnesses, BMW will now unlock a lot of the extra features through a software update, or they'll just add the extra module on, but the harnesses are there. All these cars are typically already pre-wired, but it's all the extras that you think are desirable that you're going to pay dearly for, and that's why they're a very high initial price. We also can't forget about the glitzy showroom. You have to pay for that. Somebody is, it's not them. Take a look. Right there, all that beautiful marble tiling. Of course, you get the concierge service, the fancy coffee in the showroom, and the fireplace to boot. We also can't forget that BMW has to train their certified technicians so they're up to speed, and so they also know how to work on these over-complex vehicles. Not only that, they have those expensive jumpsuits with their name on there, like they're jumping out of a plane with a parachute on their back. But there's a lot of initial costs. Let's also not forget about the marketing that BMW throws at everything, but they do look at other things like research and development. They're one of the leading characters in terms of the use of plastics, recycling. They're actually investing money into extruding plastic products and as well 3D printing. There's lots of reasons they're putting into R&D, but they transfer those costs down to you and I as the consumer of a new BMW. But after all that snot, farts, and nonsense, and the vehicles become used 3, 4, 5 years down the road, the prices start to settle down to more likely what they're worth on the used car market, which means that there's an appearance of a high depreciation rate. Which there is. And the third reason why used BMWs are so cheap is because of this. It's the horror show called the service department. And so driving beautiful cars like this can be very exhilarating, exciting, and as well just overall wonderful. However, there's a time, once a year, once every 2 years, where you're gonna have to take this car in for servicing. That's where you're gonna feel the burn, and it's service costs. Now, it's not that BMWs are the worst, most unreliable car on the planet, no, but the service costs are extraordinarily high. And God forbid you ever get a check engine light, those guys are gonna tell you, not ask you, tell you you need to pay $250 diagnostic fee just to plug that little dongle in there and tell you what you knew in 5 minutes of your own time at home with your own little code reader. But the sad part is they've got you by the short and curlies. Once you've committed, you've signed that waiver, they take it in, now you're paying and you're committed. And in most cases, they won't even give you credit for the diagnostic fee, even if you elect to get the car repaired there. There was a time when they would waive that fee if you decided to follow through on the repair. Those days have come and gone. I mean, here's a great example. We have an E90 BMW 3 Series, the PCV heater that's known to ignite. And you're only lucky if you happen to own one with a recall that's covered under NHTSA. Many relatively significant factory faults are not covered by NHTSA, and sadly, the owner of the car is usually on the hook for big, ugly repairs. For example, right there, this is the E92 BMW we already spoke of. Beautiful car. But what you have here is the wonderful, glorious V8 called the S65 engine, and it's legendary for its sound effects. However, what doesn't sound so wonderful is that high screechy tone in your voice once a service advisor tells you how much you have to pay out when it's time to fix these cars. For example, the throttle actuators mounted up top, those are problematic. They will go, not if, when they do fail. They're going to be at least $2,000 to $4,000 to repair that if you get the shop to do it. We also can't forget the rod bearings. They're at the bottom of the engine. It's a chronic issue, well known by the S65 like this and the S85 V10 engines of the same generation. Between tight tolerances, wrong or grade of oil, and overzealous owners contribute to the fact that those rod bearings prematurely wear out. Quite often, we're talking 50, 60, 70,000 miles, and they're right down to the wood, so to speak. Now, if you have to do a rod bearing job, that usually means pulling up subframe at the bottom. It's a lot of work, a lot of disassembly, and for a certified tech or somebody who knows how to do it, that's great. However, it's still you're not gonna leave the shop without paying anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 to get that resolved. If you didn't let it get too far and you end up scoring your crankshaft, then you've essentially got a turfed engine. But you've got some vehicles direct injected, clearly could need carbon defouling, expensive water pumps and thermostats that are regular failure points. And in vehicles like this, equipped with the 50i series, this beautiful X5 is gorgeous, yes, but it's actually equipped with the V8 twin turbo 4.4 liter lump. Under there, that's called the N63, and they're notorious for timing chain failures, excessive battery draw, as well as oil consumption. So there are really very few BMWs that you're going to get out scot-free without paying a ton in service costs. And the fourth reason is actually stiff competition. For example, like this. We have this beautiful AMG car, twin turbo V8. Beautiful accents, chrome handles, great wheels with big calipers, massive carbon fiber accents in some cases. We're dealing with a C63S. Gorgeous rear finishing with great splitters as well as massively oversized exhaust systems. Vents, wheels, of course, beautiful rocker panels. LEDs that look very aggressive and actually angry, which makes it impressive. On to 3-star. You also have a beautiful Lexus. Now Lexus is stepping up their game. The IS 500 are now putting down a car with almost 500 horsepower. Lexus has the ultimate in reliability under their sleeve as well, and some cars are actually relatively fun to drive, making them a great substitute for a modern day BMW. And there's even more. For example, like this little hot rod, the Audi TT RS, one of my personal favorites. You also have the standard TT, RS5, and a whole variety of different style of Audis to suit your needs and tastes. How about this? Maserati. Absolutely gorgeous vehicle. Again, further competition for the Bavarian brand. So the bottom line, they used to be notoriously known for some of the best driving, the ultimate driving machine as a matter of fact. But the fact of the matter is, virtually every single car manufacturer has stepped up their game tenfold, and now it's really a flipping match of the coin to see which car you actually want. And the fifth reason why used BMWs are so cheap is right under the hood here. Here we have a 430 convertible, cabriolet if you will. Latest, greatest. Some people don't love that grille. The latest offering from BMW in terms of the 4 Series convertibles. This is the 4-cylinder, it's called the B48 engine, and it's chocked with performance. 255 horsepower makes it a lively, sprightly little driving experience. And it's relatively frugal on fuel as well. Now, the B48 and the B58 is the 6-cylinder version, have gotten certainly better from the older N20, the 4-cylinder, and as well as the older N55. So this is in fact showing to be a little bit more reliable. But if there's one thing that we all know, and it's the overuse of plastics under the hood. And the worst part is, because now all modern day BMWs pretty much are turbocharged engines, what you're having is an extreme heat source underneath the engine, and you're blending that with coolant parts and plastic hoses, plastic water pumps and thermostats, all of which start to get brittle, frail, and start to catastrophically fail in that 4 to 6 year range and time frame. Now they're great lease vehicles. They do wonderful for the first few years, absolutely. Where they start to fall apart is when the second and third owners start to buy these and start to pay and feel the wrath of what using plastic under the hood really means. I mean, it's okay that they use plastic on the bumpers, and it's okay that they use plastic on the rockers and mirrors, or plastic in the dash or some parts. There's parts where plastic makes sense. It's light, it's economical to use, and in some cases it's stylish. But the problem is, we do not want to have plastic surrounding a hot turbo or even a hot engine that pumps out extreme amounts of heat, flushing hot coolant through plastic hoses and pipes. Essentially say it's called plastic fantastic, and that unfortunately is one of the reasons people know now what BMW means with the use of extensive amounts of plastic, and it actually means that they're going to face the fury of repairs in that 5 to 6 year time frame. And with all of that said, be sure to click right there. Guaranteed, if you're a person who enjoys the driving experience, because ultimately life's too short to drive boring cars, you're definitely going to want to subscribe to the channel. Many great topics if you're in the market. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.